For 10,000 years, a small region of the galaxy remained a mystery. Every sensor returned only static. Every probe that entered the area vanished without a trace. The Galactic Council, a union of 847 known species, called this place the Silent Zone. Most believed it was simply a natural anomaly, a dead region of space where nothing existed. They were wrong. Senior observer Kethra had spent her entire career studying new worlds. She belonged to the Velthari species. Tall beings with silver skin and 4 eyes that could see far beyond what most creatures could perceive. In her 200 years of service, she had documented over 200 civilizations across the galaxy. She thought she had seen everything the universe could offer, but the image on her screen made her question everything she knew. A damaged cargo ship had accidentally drifted into the Silent Zone 3 days ago. Before losing all contact, it sent back a single image. Kethra stared at that image now, her 4 eyes blinking in disbelief. It showed a blue planet covered in white clouds. Oceans sparkled under a yellow sun. Green and brown land masses spread across its surface. But what made Kethra's hearts beat faster was what the sensors detected. This planet showed signs of advanced technology and natural wilderness existing together at the same time in all of galactic history. This had never happened. Every species followed the same pattern. They evolved, they built technology, and they consumed their planet's resources. By the time any species reached advanced civilization, their world was either completely controlled or completely destroyed. Yet this blue planet had sprawling cities and untouched forests. It had massive industrial zones and wild oceans filled with life. It was impossible. The Galactic Council assembled an elite first contact team within hours of seeing the image. Kethra was chosen to lead the mission. Her team included Yenna, a Serani empath, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that could sense emotions across great distances. There was also Thorax, a Krethax warrior whose massive frame and scarred body spoke of countless battles. His species valued strength and honor above all else. Together, they represented the 3 founding species of the Galactic Council. Their ship, the Observer's Grace, was the most advanced vessel in the fleet. It could scan entire planets in minutes and remain completely hidden from any known detection system. As they approached the Silent Zone, Kethra briefed her team on what little they knew. "We are entering unknown territory," she said, her voice calm but serious. "Whatever is blocking our sensors might also be dangerous. Stay alert." Thorax crossed his muscular arms over his chest. "If there is danger, I will face it." Yenna closed her eyes and reached out with her empathic senses. "I feel something," she whispered. "It is distant, but there is life there. So much life." The ship crossed into the Silent Zone, and immediately their instruments went mad. Lights flashed across every console. Readings spiked and dropped without pattern. But unlike the probes that came before, their ship did not fail. It adapted, and slowly the chaos began to make sense. By the architects, Kethra breathed, the planet was not blocking their signals. It was drowning them out. Millions of different transmissions were broadcasting from the surface simultaneously. Radio waves, digital signals, satellite communications, all of them flooding space with noise. No wonder probes had failed. Their simple systems could not process such overwhelming input. "How is this possible?" Yenna asked, her eyes wide with wonder. Kethra began analyzing the transmissions. What she found made her silver skin turn pale. These signals are using thousands of different frequencies, and they contain different languages. Thorax leaned forward. "How many languages?" Kethra checked her readings 3 times before answering. "Over 7,000. Silence filled the ship. In all of galactic history, no species had ever maintained more than 1 language past the industrial age. Language unified civilizations. Different languages meant conflict, misunderstanding, and war. Any species that did not unify their communication destroyed themselves long before reaching space. Yet this planet had 7,000 languages, and had still developed advanced technology. The Observer's Grace settled into orbit around the blue planet. Kethra ordered deep scans, and the results were even more astonishing than the transmissions. The dominant species on this world was bipedal, with 2 arms, 2 legs, and remarkable variation in size, shape, and color. They lived everywhere. They lived in frozen wastelands where temperatures dropped far below freezing. They lived in scorching deserts where nothing should survive. They lived on mountains so high the air was thin, and they lived in valleys below sea level. Some of them even lived in structures floating on the water. This cannot be accurate, Thorax said, studying the scans. One species cannot survive in all these environments without genetic modification. The scans show no modification, Kethra replied. They are naturally adapted to everywhere. Yenna suddenly gasped and pressed her hands to her head. The emotions, she said, her voice shaking. They feel so many emotions at once. Joy and sadness together. Fear and courage at the same time. Love and anger in the same moment. I have never felt anything like this. Kethra pulled up historical data on the planet. The species called themselves humans. Their planet was called Earth. Their recorded history stretched back thousands of years, filled with wars and peace, destruction and creation, cruelty and kindness. They had built wonders and torn them down. They had hurt each other and healed each other. Their story was chaos. Yet somehow they had survived, but it was the final piece of data that made Kethra's blood run cold. She expanded the scan to show the planet's defensive capabilities. What she found was beyond anything she could have imagined. The humans possessed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet, not just once, but many times over. They had built enough destructive power to turn their beautiful blue world into ash and dust. And they had possessed this power for nearly 100 years. Yet their planet was still alive. Their species was still thriving. They had the power to end everything, and they had chosen not to use it. Kethra turned to her team, her 4 eyes reflecting the blue glow of Earth on the view screen. In all my years, she said slowly, I have never seen anything like this. Every species that develops world-ending weapons uses them. It is considered inevitable. It is written into the laws of galactic evolution. Then how are they still alive? Thorax asked. Kethra shook her head. I do not know. But we must find out. Because if humanity has learned something that the rest of the galaxy has not, then this discovery could change everything. She opened a channel to the Galactic Council. Billions of beings across 800 worlds would soon be watching. The galaxy was about to learn that they were not alone in their surprise. The humans were impossible. Kethra was determined to understand why. The observation team's first detailed scans of humanity created immediate controversy across the Galactic Council. Representatives from hundreds of worlds watched the live feed in stunned silence. The biological readings they received suggested that humans should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Yet 8 billion of them thrived on the blue planet below. Kethra studied the data with growing amazement. Humans had no natural weapons. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom, and no protective shells. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. Their senses were average at best. Compared to most predators on their own planet, they were weak and slow. By every standard measure of survival, they should have been prey, not the dominant species. How did they reach the top of their food chain? Thorax asked, genuinely confused. His species, the Krethax, had evolved with thick armor-like skin and incredible strength. He could not imagine surviving without such advantages. Kethra found the answer in the historical records, and it chilled her to the bone. They are persistence predators, she said quietly. Thorax tilted his massive head. I do not understand. Their ancient hunting method was to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could not outrun other animals in short distances. But over long distances, they could outlast anything on their planet. They would follow their target for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never giving up, till the prey simply could not run anymore. Thorax was silent for a long moment. His species respected strength and power. But this was something different. This was a species that had evolved to never quit, to keep going when all logic said they should stop. It was terrifying in a way that claws and fangs could never be. Yenna. The Serani empath had been quiet since entering orbit. Her large, dark eyes were unfocused, as she reached out with her abilities toward the planet below. Suddenly, she pulled back and wrapped her arms around herself. "What is wrong?" Kethra asked with concern. "Their emotions," Yenna said, her voice trembling. "I have scanned thousands of species across the galaxy. Every species feels emotions in a simple way: happy or sad, afraid or brave, angry or calm. But humans feel everything at once. A mother watches her child leave home. She feels joy for their future and sadness at their departure at the exact same moment. A soldier goes to war feeling terrified and courageous together. They love someone and feel frustrated with them in the same breath." Yenna looked up at her crewmates with wonder in her eyes. No species should be able to function with such emotional complexity. They should be paralyzed by conflicting feelings. Yet somehow, they use these mixed emotions as strength. They can be afraid and still act brave. They can be sad and still find joy. They are emotionally impossible. The team continued their scans and discovered more impossibilities with every passing hour. Humans kept other animals as companions, creatures they called pets. Some of these pets were predators that could easily kill a human child. Yet families welcomed them into their homes and loved them like family members. Thorax watched footage of a human sleeping peacefully while a large carnivorous animal rested beside them. "This is madness," he said. "Why would they trust a predator?" But the footage continued to show something even more surprising. Humans formed bonds with almost any creature they encountered. They rescued injured animals from danger. They built shelters for abandoned creatures. They spent resources and time caring for beings that offered nothing in return except companionship. Then the team discovered human competition. Thorax watched with intense focus as humans engaged in something called sports. Men and women battled each other with incredible intensity. They pushed their bodies to the absolute limit. They fought for victory as if their lives depended on it. And then, when the competition ended, they embraced each other. Winners comforted losers. Opponents who had fought fiercely moments before laughed together and shared meals. Thorax had fought in hundreds of battles across the galaxy. He had never seen enemies become friends so quickly. "I do not understand these creatures," he admitted, his deep voice filled with confusion. "They fight like warriors but forgive like saints. How can they switch between such extremes?" Kethra had no answer. She was too busy watching the Galactic Council's reaction to their feed. Billions of beings were observing humanity for the first time, and the response was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Some representatives called for immediate quarantine. They argued that humans were too unpredictable, too chaotic, too dangerous to contact. Others demanded immediate friendship. They believed humanity's emotional complexity made them the most advanced species ever discovered. The debate raged across 800 worlds while Kethra's team continued to gather data. They observed human art and were moved by its beauty. They listened to human music and found themselves feeling emotions they had never experienced before. They read human stories and discovered something that did not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Humans created fiction. They invented stories about things that never happened. They imagined worlds that did not exist and people who were never born. They dreamed up futures and pasts that were pure fantasy. Across the galaxy, every species only recorded facts. Stories were histories, records of what actually occurred. The concept of imagining something purely for pleasure or wonder was completely alien. Why would they waste mental energy on things that are not real? A Velthari council member asked through the feed. Kethra thought about the question carefully. Then she watched a human child playing alone, talking to invisible friends, building castles in the sand that would wash away with the tide. The child knew the castle would not last, yet built it anyway. And in that moment, Kethra began to understand. Humans did not create fiction despite its uselessness. They created it because imagination itself had value. Dreams were not waste. They were practice for making impossible things real. The team was preparing their next report. When their sensors detected something alarming, a human satellite had changed course. It was now pointing directly at their hidden ship. Somehow, despite all their advanced cloaking technology, They had been detected. Kethra braced for panic, for military response, for fear. Instead, something unexpected happened. Human scientists began broadcasting messages toward their location. The messages were not warnings or threats. They were greetings. Mathematical equations that proved intelligence, music that conveyed welcome. Images of human families smiling and waving at the sky. The humans knew they were being watched, and their response was to say hello. They should be afraid, Thorax said. Unknown visitors from space should terrify them. Yenna closed her eyes and sensed the emotions radiating from the planet. They are afraid, she confirmed. But they are also excited, hopeful, curious. They feel all of it together, and they are choosing to lead with hope. Kethra opened a channel to the Galactic Council. Her voice was steady, but her hearts were racing. Council members, she announced, humanity has detected us. They are responding not with weapons or defenses, but with welcome. I recommend we respond in kind. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen when two civilizations met for the first time. The Galactic Council erupted into chaos. 847 species argued across thousands of light years, their voices filling communication channels with debate and disagreement. Half of the council demanded that Earth be quarantined forever, sealed away from the rest of the galaxy. The other half called for immediate contact, insisting that humanity could be the most important discovery in galactic history. Kethra watched the debate unfold from her ship in orbit above Earth. She had never seen the council so divided. Species that had been allies for millennia now stood on opposite sides. The Velthari, known for their logic and calculation, argued that humans were too emotionally unstable to trust. Their unpredictable nature made them dangerous, and contact would only bring trouble. The Serani disagreed completely. They believed that humanity's emotional complexity was not a weakness, but a strength. A species that could feel fear and still act brave, that could know sadness and still choose joy, had developed something the galaxy had never seen before. They called it emotional wisdom. The Krethax warriors were split among themselves. Some saw humans as potential threats, a species that could fight with terrifying intensity when provoked. Others saw them as potential allies, beings who knew the value of strength, but also understood mercy and forgiveness. As the debate continued, one voice remained silent. The architects had not spoken in 3,000 years. They were the oldest species in the galaxy, ancient beings who had helped found the Galactic Council itself. Their technology was beyond anything other species could understand. Their knowledge spanned millions of years. When they stopped speaking, many assumed they had simply lost interest in younger species. But now, as the council argued about humanity's fate, a signal came from the architect's homeworld. Every screen across the council chamber flickered. Every voice fell silent. The architects were about to speak. Their representative appeared on the view screen. It was a being of pure energy, glowing with soft golden light. Its form shifted constantly, too complex for mortal eyes to fully understand. When it spoke, its voice resonated in the mind of every being listening. "We remember Earth," the architect said. 12,000 years ago, we visited that blue world. We found a species living in caves, hunting with stone tools, painting pictures on walls. We judged them primitive. We deemed them unworthy of contact. We left and expected them to fade into extinction, like so many others before them. The council listened in stunned silence. The architects had visited Earth before and dismissed humanity as insignificant. "We were wrong," the architect continued. "In 12,000 years, this species has gone from caves to cities, from stone tools to spacecraft. Most species require 50,000 to 100,000 years to achieve what humanity has done. They evolved faster than any species we have ever recorded. Their progress defies every model of civilizational development." Kethra felt a chill run through her body. The architects, the most advanced beings in the galaxy, were admitting they had made a mistake about humanity. Meanwhile, aboard the Observer's Grace, Yenna had been studying human art and culture. She called her crewmates over to share what she had found. On the screen, human musicians played instruments that produced sounds unlike anything in the galaxy. The music swelled and fell, mixing joy and sorrow, triumph and loss, all in the same melody. Yenna was weeping. Her species rarely cried, but tears flowed freely down her pale blue cheeks. "This music," she whispered. "It makes me feel things I have no words for. Emotions that do not exist in Serani language. Humans have developed ways to express feelings that other species cannot even name." Thorax stood beside her, his massive warrior's frame still and quiet. He had been reviewing human history, specifically their wars. What he found disturbed him deeply. Humans fought with savage intensity. Their conflicts were brutal and devastating. In this way, they were like his own species. But then came the aftermath. After the most terrible wars in human history, the winners did not destroy the losers. They rebuilt them. They turned enemies into allies. Nations that had fought each other to near extinction became close friends within a generation. Thorax had never seen anything like it. "My people hold grudges for centuries," he said quietly. "We remember every insult, every defeat, every drop of blood. But humans can forgive the unforgivable. They can heal wounds that should never close. I do not understand how, but I respect it more than I can say." Back in the council chamber, the debate had shifted. The architect's words carried tremendous weight. Species that had called for quarantine began to reconsider. Perhaps humanity was not a threat to be contained, but an opportunity to be embraced. Then a new signal arrived from Earth. Kethra checked her instruments and felt her heart stop. The humans had done something impossible. In just days, their scientists had decoded galactic standard communication protocols. They had analyzed the signals from the observation ship, figured out the language structure, and created a response. The message played across every screen in the council chamber. It was simple, composed in careful galactic standard, clearly translated from human languages. "We know you are watching. We have looked at the stars for all of our history, wondering if anyone was out there, wondering if we were alone. We hoped that when we finally met others, they would be friends. We still hope that. We have so much to share, so much to learn, so many questions to ask. Please do not be afraid of us. We only want to say hello. We have been waiting for you. We hoped you would be friends." Silence fell across the council. 847 species, trillions of beings across thousands of worlds, all held their breath at the same moment. The message was not a demand. It was not a threat. It was not even a negotiation. It was pure, simple hope. Humanity was reaching out across the void of space with nothing but an open hand and an earnest wish for friendship. Kethra found herself moved in ways she could not explain. In 200 years of making first contact with new species, she had never received a greeting like this. Most species wanted to know what the galaxy could offer them. They asked about technology, resources, protection, advantage. Humans asked only if they could be friends. The Galactic Council called for a vote. After hours of debate, a decision was reached. They would send a single representative to make first contact. The representative would land on Earth, meet with humans face to face, and determine if peaceful relations were possible. Kethra was chosen for the task. She would be the first being from the galaxy to officially greet humanity. As she prepared for descent, she realized her hands were shaking. She had done this over 200 times before, but this time felt different. This time felt like the beginning of something new, not just for humanity, but for everyone. The blue planet waited below, and Kethra knew that whatever happened next would change the galaxy forever. The observers, grace descended through Earth's atmosphere as billions of beings across the galaxy watched in anticipation. Kethra stood at the viewport, her four eyes fixed on the approaching surface. She had made first contact with over 200 civilizations. She had faced hostile species and peaceful ones, advanced empires and primitive tribes. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw below. The humans had prepared a welcome unlike anything in galactic history. The landing site was a vast open area surrounded by green fields. Flags from every nation on Earth lined the perimeter. hundreds of different colors and symbols representing the incredible diversity of human civilization. Crowds had gathered from around the world, not to protest or panic, but to celebrate. Music played from massive speakers. Food from every culture was being shared freely. Children ran and laughed while their parents looked up at the sky with wonder in their eyes. The ship landed softly on the grass. Cathra took a deep breath, steadied her nerves, and opened the door. Sunlight flooded the entrance. Warm air carried strange but pleasant scents. And there, waiting just meters away, stood humanity. They did not approach with weapons. They did not send soldiers or diplomats in formal armor. Instead, they sent children. A small group of young humans walked toward the ship, guided by smiling adults. They carried flowers in their tiny hands, bright, colorful blossoms picked from Earth's gardens. Their faces showed no fear, only curiosity and excitement. Cathra descended the ramp slowly, her silver skin reflecting the sunlight. The children stopped a few feet away and looked up at her with wide eyes. She was unlike anything they had ever seen, an alien from the stars, living proof that they were not alone in the universe. One child, a little girl with dark hair and bright eyes, stepped forward. She held out a handful of yellow flowers and spoke in a clear, brave voice. "These are for you." "Welcome to Earth," Cathra had spoken with kings and emperors. She had negotiated with warlords and ancient beings of immense power. But in that moment, accepting flowers from a human child, she found herself unable to speak. She knelt down to the girl's level and carefully took the flowers in her long fingers. "Thank you," she managed to say. The little girl smiled. "Do you want to be friends? 200 first contacts? Thousands of species encountered across the galaxy. And never, not once, had anyone asked Cathra that simple question. Friendship was not usually part of first contact protocols. Species discussed trade, territory, technology, treaties. They calculated advantage and measured risk. But this child was asking for none of that. She only wanted to know if the strange visitor from the stars would be her friend. "Yes," Cathra said softly. "I would like that very much." The crowd erupted in cheers. Yenna and Thorax emerged from the ship to join their leader, and the humans welcomed them with equal warmth. People pressed forward, not to grab or threaten, but to shake hands, offer gifts, and introduce themselves. The humans had brought presents. Seeds from every continent, carefully labeled and packaged, representing the plants that fed and beautified their world. Music recordings from every culture, showing the incredible range of human creativity. And most precious of all, a golden disc containing the sounds of Earth itself. Waves on shores, birds in trees, children laughing, hearts beating. It was a gift that said everything about who they were. Yenna walked among the crowd, her empathic senses overwhelmed by the emotion surrounding her. Humans reached out to touch her hands, not out of fear or aggression, but simple curiosity. When they sensed that she could feel what they felt, they did not pull away. Instead, they focused on happy memories, trying to share their joy with her. An elderly woman approached Yenna and took her hand gently. "Can you feel how happy we are?" the woman asked. "We dreamed of this day our whole lives. Meeting people from other worlds, knowing we are not alone. This is the best day we have ever known." Yenna felt the woman's emotions flow through her. Decades of hope and wonder compressed into a single moment of pure happiness. Tears streamed down both their faces, and they embraced like old friends reunited after a long separation. Thorax found himself surrounded by curious humans who wanted to know about his warrior culture. He expected them to be intimidated by his size and scars. Instead, they were fascinated. They asked about his battles, his training, his honor codes. Then a small, elderly grandmother pushed through the crowd and looked up at the massive warrior. "You look strong," she said with a mischievous smile. "Want to arm wrestle?" Thorax was confused. He could crush most beings with a single blow. This tiny human could not possibly compete. But the crowd cheered encouragement. The grandmother sat down at a table with her elbow raised and ready. Thorax sat across from her, careful not to hurt her fragile frame. When the match began, He applied what he thought was gentle pressure. But the grandmother was not relying on strength alone. She used technique, leverage, and timing. And before Thorax knew what had happened, his hand was pressed against the table. The crowd exploded with laughter and applause. The grandmother winked at the stunned warrior. Strength is not everything, dear. Sometimes wisdom wins. For the first time in decades, Thorax laughed. A deep, rumbling sound that surprised even himself. He had spent his life measuring worth through combat and power, but this tiny human had just taught him something valuable without throwing a single punch, as the celebration continued. The Galactic Council observed everything through the live feed. They watched humans share food with aliens who had never tasted Earth cuisine. They watched children teach Kethra simple games that required no common language. They watched Yenna dancing with a group of elderly humans who moved slowly but smiled widely. They watched Thorax carry young children on his massive shoulders while they giggled with delight. This was not what first contact usually looked like. There were no negotiations over resources, no discussions of military alliances, no calculations of strategic advantage. The humans were not trying to gain anything from their visitors. They were simply sharing their world, their joy, their hearts. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Kethra stood at the edge of the celebration. She was composing her report in her mind, trying to find words to describe what she had witnessed. How could she explain to the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their survival skills, but their capacity for pure, unconditional welcome? A small tug on her sleeve interrupted her thoughts. She looked down to find the same little girl who had given her flowers that morning. "I have a question," the girl said seriously. "What is it? Are there others out there? Other planets with people who are sad, or lonely, or who do not have friends?" Kethra thought about the galaxy, about the many species she had encountered who lived in isolation, fear, or endless conflict. "Yes," she admitted. "There are many who struggle." The little girl nodded thoughtfully. Then she looked up at Kethra with determined eyes. "Then we have to help them. We have lots of love to share. That is what my grandmother says. When you have love, you should share it. Can you take our love to them?" Kethra had prepared her entire life for first contact. She knew all the protocols, all the procedures, all the proper ways to introduce species to the galactic community. But nothing had prepared her for a child asking how humanity could help the rest of the universe. In that moment, she understood something profound. Humanity was not asking what the galaxy could give them. They were asking what they could give the galaxy, and that changed everything. 1 year had passed since the first meeting between humanity and the Galactic Council. In that single year, more had changed than in the previous 1,000 years of galactic history. The council was gathering now for a historic vote, but everyone already knew the outcome. Humanity had proven themselves in ways no one expected. Kethra stood before the assembled representatives, preparing to deliver her final report. Behind her, images flickered on massive screens showing the events of the past year. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "When we first discovered Earth, I thought I understood what we would find. Another species seeking technology, protection, resources, power. Every civilization we have ever contacted wanted something from the galaxy. But humanity surprised us all. The screens showed human doctors landing on plague-stricken worlds. Diseases that had ravaged alien populations for generations were being treated by human medical teams who had volunteered to help. They worked without payment, without demands, asking only where they were needed most. Human medicine approaches problems differently than our own," Kethra explained. "Where we tried to eliminate disease completely, they learned to work with it, to understand it, to adapt. Their immune systems have fought millions of pathogens throughout their evolution. That experience gave them insights we never developed." The images shifted to show human engineers working alongside alien scientists. They were solving problems that the galaxy had abandoned as impossible. 3 major scientific barriers, challenges that the greatest minds across 800 worlds had failed to overcome. It's been broken in the first 6 months of contact. A Vel 3 representative rose to speak. His species had been humanity's harshest critics, calling them too emotional, too chaotic, too unpredictable for meaningful contribution. Now, his voice carried a different tone. "We are a species of logic," he said. "We approach every problem through calculation and analysis. When we face a barrier, we work within established parameters until we find a solution or determine none exists. Humans do not work this way." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Humans use something they call creativity. When faced with an impossible problem, they do not accept the parameters. They ask what if the parameters are wrong. They imagine solutions that logic says cannot exist. And then, impossibly, they make those solutions real. They have solved problems we declared unsolvable because they refused to believe anything was truly impossible." The screens now showed Serani healing centers, transformed by human influence. Yina appeared in the footage, working alongside human therapists to help traumatized aliens recover from ancient wounds. Human emotional complexity has proven to be a gift beyond measure. Yina's voice narrated over the images. "They understand pain in ways we never could because they have felt so much of it themselves. They know how to sit with suffering without being destroyed by it. They know how to find hope in darkness. And they taught us methods of emotional healing that have helped species who have carried trauma for centuries finally find peace." The footage shifted again, this time showing Krethek's warriors in council with human diplomats. Thorax appeared on screen, standing beside former enemies who now sat together as allies. "My people have a new tradition," Thorax's recorded voice announced. "After battle, we now seek reconciliation instead of eternal vengeance. We learn this from humans, who somehow turn their most devastating wars into lasting peace. They showed us that true strength is not in destroying your enemies, but in making them your friends." The chamber fell silent as the most unexpected speakers requested attention. The architects, who had been quiet for 3,000 years before humanity's discovery, wished to address the council. Their glowing representative materialized at the center of the chamber, golden light pulsing gently as it spoke. 3,000 years ago, we stopped speaking to the younger species. We had watched the galaxy for millions of years. We had seen civilizations rise and fall, species evolve and destroy themselves, the same patterns repeating endlessly. War, consumption, extinction. We lost hope that anything would ever truly change. We withdrew because we believed the universe was destined to remain as it had always been. The being's light grew brighter with each word. Humanity has restored our hope. Not through power or technology, but through something far more valuable. They believe the universe can be better, and they act as though this belief is truth. They see strangers and imagine friends. They see problems and imagine solutions. They see darkness and imagine light. This is not naivety. This is the force that changes reality itself. Kethra stepped forward for her concluding remarks. A year ago, she had encountered humanity for the first time and called them impossible. Now she understood that impossible was exactly what they were meant to be. "I have studied hundreds of civilizations," she said. "I have documented their achievements and failures, their rises and falls. Every species I encountered asked the same question when they first met the galaxy. What can we gain? Humanity asked a different question. How can we help?" She gestured to the images surrounding the chamber, showing humans across the galaxy, teaching, healing, building, creating, sharing everything they had. They sent their doctors to worlds that could never repay them. They shared knowledge with species that had nothing to offer in return. They gave their music, their art, their stories to anyone who wished to experience them. They asked for nothing except the chance to be useful, to make things better, to spread the joy they felt at not being alone in the universe.
Ow.
The vote was called. 847 species registered their decision. The result was unanimous. Humanity was welcomed into the Galactic Council, not as ordinary members, but with a special designation never before granted. They were named Ambassadors of Hope, charged with spreading their unique gift throughout the galaxy. 5 years later, the change was visible everywhere, on a distant world at the edge of known space. a young alien child looked up at the night sky. Stars twinkled across the darkness, countless points of light stretching into infinity. The child's parents stood beside them, following their gaze upward. "What is out there?" the child asked, their voice full of wonder in the past. The answer would have been simple. Danger, strangers, emptiness, beings to fear or avoid or compete against. The galaxy had always been a cold place, full of species struggling alone against the void. But now the parents smiled warmly and pulled their child close. "Friends," they said softly. "There are friends out there, across the galaxy, in schools and homes and ships, traveling between the stars." Beings of all species had adopted a new greeting. They had learned it from the humans, who used it to welcome everyone they met, regardless of species or origin or history. "Hello, friend. How can I help?" The galaxy had watched Earth in astonishment that first day, unable to believe what they were seeing. A species that should not exist, thriving in impossible conditions, holding the power to destroy themselves, yet choosing not to. Reaching out to the stars with nothing but hope in their hearts. Now the astonishment had transformed into something deeper. Gratitude, inspiration, love. Because in the end, it was not human technology or human power that changed everything. It was not their persistence or their creativity or even their emotional complexity. Though all of these played a role, what truly transformed the galaxy was simpler than any. Of that, humans believed the universe should be better. And when they found it was not, they refused to accept that reality. They imagined something greater, something kinder. Something filled with friendship and hope and shared joy. And then, together with the galaxy, they made it real. The stars still sparkled in the endless night. But they no longer seemed cold or distant. They seemed like beacons, guiding travelers toward warmth and welcome, and worlds full of beings who wanted nothing more than to say hello and ask how they could help. The galaxy had changed, and it would never be the same again.